Welcome to the lABLEd podcast, a show about disability, illness and difference. I'm Lucy.
And I'm Alice.
And that's Lola.
Kaleidoscope identity, and this is who I'm meant to be. I'm just labelled me. I'm just labelled me.
The lABLEd podcast is a show about disability, illness and difference. We cover very personal and sometimes controversial topics. As such, listeners may hear language, including profanity or terminology that they find offensive. Please be aware of this as you listen to this week's episode.
Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new episode of lABLEd, the podcast. Today we have Lee with us. Lee, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Hello everyone. My name is Lee. I have cerebral palsy and I am an advocate specifically dealing with mental health. I'm a bit crazy and a bit of a nonconformist. Just really passionate about disability awareness and getting positive messages out there.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem.
Alice, do you want to kick off with your line of question?
Sure. So I thought you said that you're, a bit nonconformist. Where do you think that comes from? Do you think that that's kind of a personality trait? Do you think that's something that you developed because, growing up with a disability? How do you sort of experience that?
Well, there's many facets that, what tends to happen when you're growing up, and I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s. So what tends to happen is that all disabled people in them days just got lumped together. And I really wasn't really keen on being lumped together. I wanted to do my own thing and formulate my own identity. Because the trouble is that when you're lumped together as a whole, society believes that the identity is one, not a collective. Mm-hmm. So I decided that either consciously or subconsciously that I wanted to strike out and do my own thing. And I also feel that one of the things that spurred me to do my own thing is that at that time, society was trying to dictate to me what I was allowed, what I deserved, what I was entitled to. Whether that be a job, whether it be a relationship, whether it be any of those things. And I think, what made me strike out is the fact that I was determined to buck the stereotype and do my own thing.
It's really interesting, actually, Lee, that you sort of say about sort of being lumped together. And I think somewhere in my sort of deep down unconsciousness, even though I have friends who are disabled, I wouldn't necessarily say that I am altogether happy about being lumped in with everybody. So I've got friends of mine who have got cerebral palsy and all sorts of different disabilities, and I love them dearly. However, when I have to go to places like gigs or, like live music events where you're sort of all sat on a ramp together and that kind of thing, and I don't know these people from Adam, but other people who don't know me and just walk past that line of people who are sat on the access ramp would go, oh, look, they're coming out and enjoying themselves. And I really don't like being lumped with disabled people that I don't know. Do you understand?
It's just the you're all disabled, so you must all know each other. I have constantly had people asking me if I know other guide dog users, and because I do a lot of fundraising and stuff, actually I do know quite a lot of guide dog users. But quite often people will be like, oh, do you know Bob and his dog Stephen? And I'm just like, no. No, oh yeah, they live in Glasgow. You sort of think, no, of course I don't know them.
No.
Or they expect us all to get on, and actually, we don't all get on. We're just like other people, and just because like we've got similar understanding of things. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's a bonding thing, that we must be like friends. We can still disagree and think you're an absolute arsehole sometimes. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of being stuck together as, oh, you must know. Like, I've been asked before, do you know my auntie's sister's brother's, because he's in a wheelchair? And I'm like, no, I don't even know your auntie. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of...
There is that sort of autopilot thing that even disabled people will automatically look at a wheelchair going by and go, do I know them? Which is something I automatically do, you know, and I think, oh, I don't, you know, and you know, the thing is as well, I think just because you have the same condition, it doesn't mean that you have the same traits or same view on life, and you know,
or even the same experience of that condition.
No, exactly.
Although I do just want to go back a little bit and say that you, Lee, talking about somebody in a wheelchair going past and you go, oh, do I know them? Made me think of my guide dog when she sees other guide dogs. Even if she doesn't know who they are, she's like, oh, we've got the same job. I always think she's rushing over to start a union or something.
It's a bit like, I've got to do this thing that's called like the sort of wheelchair head nod. So you see somebody like in a wheelchair coming toward you. You don't know them, but you kind of want to acknowledge that you've seen them, and you go, "All right."
It's like, it's cripple etiquette. It's basically what it is.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's the same with being in wheelchairs on mobility scooters. We all do it.
Yeah.
And it's just a sense of acknowledgement, and I think probably where that comes from is an innate connection with the idea of not being seen.
I was just going to say that. I imagine it comes from the fact that you're used to not being acknowledged by people without disabilities, so you acknowledge one another.
Yeah,
it is just an acknowledgement. It's nothing else.
No, you don't want to start a conversation. You just want to go, all right.
No, I don't want to do anything. I've got too much to do.
Yeah, I want to walk past you. I'll give you a head nod, and I'll look at you, and then I'll just carry on. Do not engage me with any further conversation.
Well, I'm normally going so fast that even if they try to do that, I can't. They're just about to turn around and go, hello. And if you've got CP, turning around is quite hard. So,
yeah, I know. It's really weird, actually, because, you know, I don't really speak about the acknowledgement thing we do in the street to anybody else, because nobody's ever really asked or noticed, I don't think.
My partner does. My partner notices it all the time. I always do it.
Yeah.
And she always laughs.
You're sort of both talking about this kind of a camaraderie amongst fellow wheelchair users, but then, Lee, you also said at the beginning, you know, that you felt this kind of push, you wanted to push back against that being, as you said, lumped in with all the other disabled people. Do you sort of have you found that there's a bit of conflict there between the being part of, you know, a tribe, but also trying to find your own identity?
Well, it depends on when it is, where it is, when it is, what the agenda is. For example, you know, like your example about being at a gig and being on the ramp.
Yeah.
I really don't give a shit about that, because all I care about is the fact that I've got better seats than probably anybody in the house.
Well, it depends where you go, really.
Well, at the NEC, it's right at the front on the side of the stage. So
yeah,
I don't really care about that. I think I've got a better seat than you just because I'm in a wheelchair. You know, that's all I think about.
Well, and I always think at a gig as well, you're probably going to meet a lot of like-minded people, because they're people who are into the same music as you. Otherwise, they wouldn't bother to be there.
Yeah,
I do have to apologise to the people sat around me in earshot that I will sing to every song, and it will be very bad, and you will get very pissed off with me very quickly.
Yeah. No, I mean, I travel all over I travel all over the country, and I've been to, abroad. For gigs and stuff, and and I always find people are very accommodating, and it's fine. But it is, I don't think about that kind of thing in that situation. But if somebody was to turn around and say to me, say for example, if I was single, and they said, "Would you like to go on Undateables?"
Oh no,
I wouldn't do that.
No,
because it's, that's a socially acceptable freak show.
Yes.
And that's also lumping people together, and it's also saying that actually the curiosity of disabled people having the same emotions and same needs and wants as everybody else is different. So I'm fundamentally opposed to that.
I have big issues with the undateables, and I've been single for a very long time, and people often say to me, "Oh, have you tried the undateables?" And I'm like, don't even know, because there is nothing about me. I don't even want the insinuation that I am undateable,
Yeah.
And I think the word, the title in itself is enough to go, no, thank you. I don't want to be associated with that at all.
Yeah.
Because I have a hard enough time believing that I am attractive enough, that, that kind of thing. And I don't need society to think, oh, yeah, she's weird, she is, because, she's after.
Yeah, because it compounds, that kind of program compounds possibly inner beliefs of the disabled person.
Yeah.
So if you go on a date, it doesn't work out. In your head, you're going to go, well, of course it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And that can have profound psychological problems later.
I think fundamentally a decision to go on a reality TV show is quite reflective of a person's self-esteem in general. So I'd be inclined to say, even as if I were a non-disabled person and I got invited to go on a date on the Undateables, I'd be a bit like, never mind this person's, physical, sensory, intellectual disability. There's going to be some baggage here. Do I want to deal with that?
Well, everybody's got baggage, whether they're able-bodied or disabled. It's just that.
Absolutely, but I think choosing to go on reality TV means you've got a certain kind of baggage.
Yeah, you're a certain type of person if you choose to lay your life out.
I think we just have to be thankful that nobody has said to me, have you ever thought about going on Naked Attraction? Because that is a hard pass.
Well, somebody has asked me if I wanted to do that, and I said, look, it would take me 4 hours to get my shoe off. So
I'm very glad I'm married, because it means I never have to date again. Definitely a relief.
Yeah, I think, things always happen when you're not looking.
Yeah.
And, I've been with my partner 15 years and I wasn't looking. And, and that's what I think. But I just wanted to say, going back to your original question, Alan, that
so we've gone off on a tangent.
Yeah, one of the only places where I do allow connections with it, I'm a member of a performing arts group called Ego Performance Company, and we are a group of actors that are a mixture of all different types of disabilities, and they're also able-bodied people as well. And we all act and we all do plays. Like over the lockdown, we did a soap called Corona Nation Street, which was done via Zoom and phone, and it was brilliant. It got spread in the Telegraph, Coventry Telegraph, and because we never turn anybody away, because we're completely inclusive, and it's wonderful. It's the only time in my life where I allow that. But I don't allow that about my disability. It's an opportunity for me to escape.
Yeah.
So like last Christmas, I played Richard III, and we changed it. We called it Richard the Spaz. And there was a real issue with the word spaz, but I love that word. It's my favourite word. We did that, and that's the only time where I concede, where I mix with other disabled people.
Yeah, and there is a time and a place for it. I mean, I think I went to a special school, and I was there from the age of 3 to the age of 19-ish.
Yeah, me too. 17.
Yeah, I think by the time I left school, I had my fill of I got my disabled friends that I didn't want anymore. Do you know what I mean? And then I went to a mainstream college, and I got a load of mainstream friends. Is mainstream friends the right phrase? I don't know.
Why don't you just call them friends?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I got quite a few non-disabled friends. And I've got that quite nice balance now, because all I knew, I think, growing up, all my friends, apart from family friends, all my friends that were school friends were friends with disabilities. Before I started school, I didn't know anybody with any disabilities. I only knew me.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I've gone through like stages in my life where I think I've had enough of disabled friends. I want some non-disabled friends, and then I think, so I've still got people who have got disabilities who are my friends, and I still keep in touch with them regularly. But it's not kind of like constant all the time. Will you be my friend? Do you want to come round for a sleepover? That kind of thing. It's not. It's a complete. As you get older, it's a completely different relationship, isn't it? And
Well, I think it is for any good friendship, regardless of what the general makeup is. Me personally, I have a mixture of all kinds. I don't have many disabled close friends, but I just do what I like who I like. I'm a bit like Marmite. You either despise me or love me, and if you love me, you really love me, and if you despise me, there's no going back. And that and I have no problem with that.
Yeah, but I do think as well that, in fact, I was saying this to my mum this morning, the fact that I feel it's very difficult to make friends with disabled people, because they get this kind of, I don't know what to say kind of thing. So if I spend half my time calming them down, making sure they're happy enough and all that, like they're not, they're not startled as much, I should say. They're not happy enough. Not happy enough.
Comfortable, you mean?
Yes, that's what I mean. My brain's not working this morning, Alice.
It's been a long week, Lou. It's been a long week.
It's something to do with brain damage. I don't know.
It could be. I could be just that I'm very tired and I've not had enough tea.
Look, I'm fed up with these excuses. You've got to get a grip.
Yeah. Wake up, Lucy. Wake up.
As somebody who didn't go to a school for people with, support needs and disabilities, I had mainstream friends, and I didn't have anybody who understood my disabled experience for a really long time. And so for me, actually meeting people who have the same disability experience as me has been really nice. And I've developed some really close friendships with people. I mean, what it ultimately boils down to is that I have things in common with them that extend beyond those, our disabled experiences.
Yeah, I think the problem is that, and it's funny enough, I've got the director of the theatre company that I belong to is a very close friend. I've known her a long time, and what we were discussing this, and what she was saying, there is someone in our circle that's trans, and what we were sort of saying is that this person, her whole life is defined by that experience. That's all she talks about. That's all she,
that's all she wants to talk about.
It's just heavy all the time.
Yeah.
And whereas me, I have cerebral palsy. It's a tiny speck of my personality. Even when the first time I met Alice, yes, we had the obligatory, so what's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? But we swiftly moved on to other stuff, and because when you're talking to somebody else who has a disability, it's boring talking about disability. What we're interested in other stuff. Which is hence why I'm here.
I was going to say, then you've come to the wrong place, because this is the disability podcast.
I know, yeah.
But we have been saying that, haven't we, this week, Alice? The fact that to many people we've talked to this week, the fact that what is it about disabled people and us as disabled people that makes non-disabled people so frightened to say anything, when actually, like you say, Lee, our disability is like the tip. The very, very, very tip of the iceberg of what we want to talk about.
I think the problem is, and this is a very controversial point, is that I strongly believe, I am of the position that disabled people, as a whole, have a responsibility to the way that they behave and the way that they interact in society. And what I mean by that is that when I out for whatever reason, I have to make sure every time that the experience that somebody has with me is a positive experience, because I am well aware that the experience, if it is anything else but positive, can be so damaging to that person's perception, not just of me, but of disability as a whole. And what needs to happen is, it's simple things, like, for example, silly things that irritate me. A couple of years ago, there was a Paralympian, who is a wheelchair user, on a train. She wanted to go to the toilet. The toilet was out of order. So they said that they would stop the train so that she could get off and go to the toilet and reboard the train. Unfortunately, by the time they got to the train station, she'd wet herself, and she sued the train company. Now, to me, and this person was a Paralympian, quite well decorated, and this was all over the news, and she settled. They gave her a wad of cash. That was that. And she went on this morning, and I saw her coming into the building, and this person held the door open. She didn't even say thank you. She didn't even turn around and acknowledge the person who'd held the door open for her. And I was pointing out, when this was all kicking off, because I was incensed, not at the fact that she'd wet herself, it was at the fact that she had the audacity to sue the train company. Because I believe that shit happens. These type of things happen, and it's nobody's fault. Now, she could have used her platform as a Paralympian for a much more constructive way, and she could have said, look, this happened, this was unpleasant, let's see what we can do to make sure that this doesn't happen again. What can we do? What dialogue can I have with you to try and get this all, instead of browbeating a train company that is doing its best. And if you go back to the Disability Discrimination Act, up until that was in force, if you were a disabled person, you had to sit in the guard's van.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was appalling. And I just said, if I'd have been that train company, I would have not given her a damn penny. Because,
No, I really disagree with that, actually, because I think, no, some people have a fundamental human right to be able to relieve themselves when they need to relieve themselves on public transport.
Yeah.
And if a train finds that its access toilet is out of action, then the train company have a responsibility to provide an accessible, a train that is fully accessible for this person. And I think that, especially considering how much train tickets cost and how much the board members of train companies make, I think I appreciate that she could have perhaps been gentler in her approach to kind of raising the issue. But sometimes that gentle approach might not have got the media coverage that it did. And if that media coverage probably put the fear of God into other train companies, because all that matters to those people is their profits, and they don't want to be paying out for other disabled people who now know that if they find themselves on a train and there's no accessible toilet, they can turn around and sue.
Yeah, but the other argument to that would be that toilet was not just inaccessible. That toilet was not just out of action for her. Most toilets on trains are all disabled accessible. They all are now. So what I'm sort of saying is, there wasn't just no facilities for her. There was no facilities for anyone. It just, and what I'm saying is that other people also had to suffer that. It wasn't just her. It wasn't just directed at her. Lots of other people on that train had to suffer that. That. I agree. It's not pleasant, and I do understand the importance of media awareness. And I think you've got a very valid point that they would have shaken the fear of God. But my biggest worry is the overall perception of how she comes across, and her victory may have been that it may be that other train operators, quite rightly, as you say. It may have put the fear of God in them, and it may have asked them to pull their socks up. But there's a wider battle which she lost, which is her demeanour, her responsibility for how she comes across, and how she comes across to the wider public and their perception of people with disabilities. And that's the battle she lost, and she could have won both had she played it better.
Yeah, I happen if you look at that point that Lee's just made about, it's about the way you phrase things, and being a bit more, having that positive interaction with people day to day when you're out and about in the house. I definitely do feel that sort of I feel that responsibility too, because I have to keep in the back of my head at all times that I may be the first disabled person somebody's ever met.
Exactly.
And so therefore, because I may be their first experience, of course they're going to ask the stupid questions. Of course they're going to, possibly not phrase questions the right way, and it may cause offence. But again, I know from a personal point of view, I know that when people are being malicious and when they're not, and when it's just a genuine, like, I didn't know any better. So I welcome people to ask me questions.
Don't stare, ask.
Yeah, but I'd rather you ask than sit there gulping with your mouth open, looking at me as if I'm an alien. Just ask that question, because I will answer it, and I can guarantee you it's not the first time I've been asked it.
But don't you feel that the experience of 90% of disabled people is people trying to be careful and trying to be aware of what they say and trying to put out that positive image, and yet it's still the 10% of people who are selfish and offer negative representations that the public and that the media continue to latch onto? Is that really the responsibility of the disabled community? This is not necessarily my opinion. This is just me putting it out there. Is it the responsibility of the disabled community to keep fighting and pushing to be positively, to represent themselves positively when the media is not doing it?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, yes, it is. Because at the end of the day, if we were to go by that argument, you're allowing an or warped interpretation portrayed in the media to win.
The media isn't when it comes to disability, I don't think is our friend.
No.
You see Bond villains and they've got facial disfigurement, or the new Witches film, and it's like she's got hand deformity, and then you turn the television on and you hardly ever see a disabled person, and when you do, it's like, nobody, like the lady who was on the Bake Off who had half an arm and nobody mentioned it. That was like, hallelujah, praise the Lord.
And also, I'm a celebrity, so
exactly. Nobody bats an eyelid, and you're like, oh, this is novel. I wonder if this is the new norm now. So because the media isn't doing us any favours, I think the disabled community go, well, if the media isn't helping, project that message of...
You have to. Yeah. You have a responsibility to, because at the end of the day, it can have such an amazing effect. Because what I'm sort of saying is, I mean, a classic example I always use is that I travel using Journey Care, the train service, right? And I remember when I first met my partner and I was taken aback to meet my parents for the first time and all that. And we were at Ely Station, and this chap turned around and said to me, what are you doing in Norwich then? I said, I'm taking my girlfriend to meet my parents. He said, are you nervous? I said, no, I know them. And another one said, have you got any baggage? I said, what, me personally? Or you, it's those kind of things, those kind of little interactions. Or even closer to that, I was in Kew Gardens a couple of weeks, about a month or so ago, 5-6 weeks ago, and this chap, security guard, was trying to say to me, can I walk down steps? And he didn't ask me, he asked the people I was with. But I didn't bat an eyelid about that, because you don't need to battle that. All you need to do is go, yes, I can.
Yes.
And his whole demeanour then changed. So it is our responsibility, because if we don't do it, who is?
Yeah.
And we're the only people that can control how that is portrayed. I can control how I come across, in my sphere.
Yeah.
And the great thing is, if that person has a positive experience, they're going to go back and tell their wives, their husbands, their partners about that experience. And that little tiny interaction will change the way that they then approach a particular situation. And that has to be good.
I agree with what you're saying, but I sort of think you can spend a lot of little spoons doing that sort of thing, with every person you meet, and they, as you said, go away and they tell their partners and their kids, and that's maybe the perceptions of 3 or 4 people fundamentally changed. Or you can spend some bigger spoons trying to actually get the media to recognize what they're doing, and get people to recognize, the public to recognize what the media is doing in its representation, and potentially reach millions.
You could, and the same, the thing still applies that, I don't know who I could be talking to a media producer. I could be interacting with a producer. I could be interacting with somebody from the BBC and on a train journey. You wouldn't know. If you look at the disability coverage, look at it. On Channel 5, we now have full coverage of the Special Olympics. That would never have happened 20 years ago.
No.
That would never have happened 20 years ago, and certainly never before the Disability Discrimination Act. I am a product of that wonderful piece of legislation. When it first came in, I didn't think it was going to be enforceable, but I am a product of that. I am a product of those opportunities, and through that wonderful act, it has broken down barriers. And yes, it has forced people to wake it up, but it has also forced people to have a chat, have a dialogue, not be frightened, ask the questions. Yes, there's always people that are always going to be not very nice, and I agree with you, Alice. These little tiny spoon feeds, you get a bit bored, and it gets tiring, and it does. Some days it does.
Some days it feels like you're wading through treacle.
Yeah.
And you just think, why am I bothering? But then other days you have really good days, and you think, I always remember a little boy coming up to me in a supermarket, and he was sort of looking at me, but he was with his mum, and his mum, he was kind of holding onto the trolley. He was looking at me, but he wasn't staring. It was a curious look rather than a gawp. And I waved at him. He came out, he wandered over, and he said, hello. I said, hello. And he said, what's that? Pointing to the chair. I said, it's a wheelchair. Because I know I didn't go into the whole diagnosis. He was only 5. And I said, I've got poorly legs and they don't work, so I have to have a wheelchair. And he said, does it hurt? And I said, no, it doesn't hurt. And he said, there was no, it's a shame or anything like that. And he was carrying a box, and he said, can I show you my game of Hungry Hippos? Mommy says, when I get home. And I was like, that is, he'd taken the information on. He was absolutely not bothered by it. And he wanted to show me his game of Hungry Hippos. We had a chat about Hungry Hippos, and he went again. It's a bit and you just think, and you get other parents who go, don't stare, and snatch them away and go, we don't talk to people like that.
Yeah. The best experience I had was in America. I was in Orlando. And when you're going up towards Universal Studios, you go up, there's about a 3-mile thing with loads of stalls before you even get to the park. And this little boy was really giving me, stares. And the mother of the little boy said, if you're don't stare, go up and ask.
Yeah. So
he came up and he asked what was wrong, and I gave him all his answers he wanted. And I said, do you want to ride on my chair? Do you want to go? And I checked with his mum, and his mum said yes. So anyway, I took him for a spin on this electric wheelchair, brought him back, and he loved it. his mother turned around and said, I've spent hundreds of dollars on my boy today, and that's the first time he's smiled.
Really?
Yeah.
Blimey. It is a bit like that thing, isn't it, of buying a child a brand new toy and then wanting to play with a cardboard box kind of thing.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, a bit like a cat.
Yeah. The feeling you get when you have a really good experience far outweighs the bad ones.
Yeah.
And it is exhausting. It is knackering. And there is times where you think you are like a performing monkey.
Yeah.
And you think, oh, here we go. Here's the questions. Psych yourself up for it. My best friend, he will know when I'm nervous in a new situation because I'm doing the jokes first. Like and he's like, just calm down with the jokes, will you? Because it's really, you're nervous, aren't you?
Yeah.
But once they're calm and I'm, I know that they feel comfortable, I calm down and then they can see me. Do you know what I mean? It's really, there is a knack to it.
And I think it is the same as even looking at this podcast, doing this podcast, when Alice asked me if I wanted to do it, I was like, yeah, brilliant. Because I would do anything to get somebody, a group of people to think. I don't want them to understand. I just want them to think. I just want them to have an internal dialogue with themselves. And, and I would do 50,000 of these podcasts. It doesn't bother me. This is not boring at all. This is exciting because we're having a probing discussion, about things that are not normally discussed. So, this dialogue is so important. This podcast is so important because you're looking at life through a different lens. And, that's pinnacle for me.
And you don't necessarily have to agree with what we say either, so long as it's making you think, I think.
That's right.
Yeah. I think that's the whole point of what we're trying to set up here is that kind of interrogation of labels, isn't it?
Yeah, I hate labels.
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting to hear you sort of talking about trying to almost smooth the experience over for non-disabled people in their interactions with disabled people when you've kind of previously talked about being non-conformist. And I personally can't help but feel as though that sort of smoothing over and the gentle touch is, less rocking the boat and less drawing attention to oneself. Whereas, you kind of champion as well being seen as being different and, applauded and recognized for not just the difference of your wheelchair, but, the difference of other elements of yourself and your personality.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and I do appreciate the paradox, but I would disagree with the fact that smoothing the way is a non-conformist view, because if you were to go by my personal experience of what people believe about disabled people in the mainstream, most people believe that we stink, we're rude, we think the world owes us something, that we don't have a productive role in society. Even our own current government believe that we're a drain on resources. While smoothing the way is not necessarily, a fantastically exciting thing to do, it's not the most non-conformist thing that I do, but I actually do believe, because of the overwhelming view of the mass, that by smoothing the way, I am being non-conformist because I have a job, I have a mortgage, I have a partner. So when a government minister turns around and says to me, because he is saying to me, even though he may be addressing the Commons, that I'm a drain on resources, I can say, fuck you. And by smoothing the way in a more polite, eloquent way, I'm getting through much more red tape in people's brains about the ability and about what is truly capable. What we're truly capable of and what we truly can do, in society. And the way to do that is to talk and to negotiate and speak and not yell and not scream and not chain yourself to a bus and not take your clothes off and not do any of that malarkey, because you're detracting from what you're trying to do. You just need to be yourself and need to take stock of who your audience is and adapt to that.
Interesting point there. I quite like that you sort of on the one hand talked about being, polite and eloquent to members of the public, and then turning around to members of the government and saying "fuck you."
Yeah.
There's a time and a place.
Yeah. But that's an internal dialogue.
I think if there is anybody that we should be saying "fuck you" to, it is certainly our Tory government.
Totally. Totally. When you think that we've had to fight for disability living allowance, and we've had to fight for different things like that, all of those things. But, I tend, we can turn around and I can go, woe is me, life is so hard and I find it really tough, and I can do all of that. And I can give up and I can stay at home and I could watch Jeremy Kyle on reruns all day and not do anything with my life, because that is probably be what people would expect. Yeah. But the reality is I fundamentally can't do that because that's not in my DNA.
I think, Lee, we are extremely similar in our outlook, really, because I find myself going, I agree with everything you're saying. When I was a teenager, when I was moving into mainstream education for college and university, I was so worried that I was going to be the kind of person who would sort of sit at home and not do anything all day. And I was determined that I didn't want to be that kind of person. I wanted to be the person who was out there living my life regardless of any barriers I've got. And that gave me a lot of fire, I think, to not turn into that person. I didn't want to, I was determined I wasn't going to. And I think there was a lot of, you tell me I can't do something, I'll do it anyway. And I'll do it twice as better as you could.
Yep. But I also believe I went through a period of my life where I was in the way of stuff. Because society is powerful and it will dictate that you can't. I spent a long time on benefits. I didn't come off benefits until I was in my late 20s. And I started off as a volunteer for the CAB. I did my qualification in generalist advice work. I used to get paid £1.30 a day because that was all that was allowed in relation to benefits and making sure it didn't interfere. And then once I got my qualification, I got a job as a debt advisor, which I loved. And then I left that and went into insurance, and I left that, and I'm in my current role as an advocate. But, the point is that the voluntary sector gave me an idea of what was possible.
Yeah.
And, and that's when it's okay having all this belief and all this fire, but I didn't know how to put that into action. I didn't know how to do that. And it just took somebody to say, yeah, I think you'd be good.
That feeling of getting a job and somebody's seen past all your other crap.
Yeah.
It's one of the best feelings in the world.
Yeah, it is. Yep. I'm sitting here at a computer, at a desk, with dictation software. The desk is provided by the government. The computer is provided by my organisation. I've got free taxis everywhere, that I can have. I'm going to be having a support worker. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Can't fault it. But it is also down to interpretation again. It's down to how you behave and how you're perceived and making sure that you come across in the correct way. It goes back to what I'm saying. If you come across as demanding and saying, I owe the world, then you're not going to get, the door's never going to open to you. But if you go in with the idea as saying, I want to give back. And I remember Vanessa saying to me, one of the things I really liked about your interview, you said that you wanted to help the silent voices. And that always struck with me. And she goes, and that's what got you the job.
I don't like to be an inspiration, but I will happily be. Yeah, exactly. See, I have the same thing. But I will happily be in your encouragement. Because if you can see me doing it, and you're encouraged to go, I want to do that too, that is far better than going, oh, isn't that inspiring? I'll go make a cup of tea now.
No, I had a shit this morning. That was inspiring.
Yeah, exactly. It's there's something very different about the language between inspiring and encouraging.
What inspiration says to me is that a journalist doesn't know what else to say, what words to use. That's what it says to me.
And it's a knee-jerk reaction, isn't it?
And that's all it is. It's a cop-out word. It's a lazy word. And there are so many other things that you could describe me as.
And it's empty as well.
It is. It doesn't mean anything. I'm not a Disney movie.
No, sadly not. But if they want to make one about me, they could.
I'm looking forward to the big musical number.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to have Genesis I Can't Dance as my my theme tune, and the credits is going to be Walk This Way by Run DMC. But, you know.
So you talked about your job, and you talked about sort of what you do for work. And, you know, I know that your job is about advocating and supporting people with mental health issues and things like that. Tell us a little bit about how you do you feel as though there's an intersection between your sort of drive to support people like that and your disabled experience, and sort of what is your disabled experience within that employment sphere? So
the idea, I didn't realise that there was a sort of connection between my physical disability and somebody's mental disability until it happened. I'm what they call an independent mental health advocate. And we are people that go on to mental health wards, and we also work in the community to support people, making sure, particularly in hospitals, that they are aware of their rights and what they're entitled to, particularly under the Mental Health Act. And also, we also help the mentally unwell in the communities, accessing services where possible, assisting them with lots of things. It could be empowering them for confidence to do their own shopping. It could be helping them, empower them to write a letter, to make a complaint. We're not people that do stuff for them. Our primary role is to empower others, to make sure that they have access to their own potential, because they are in control. So that's what we do. And when I'm on a mental health ward, I'm in a manual wheelchair. And normally when I go on the ward and I've got a client to see, they'll go, "Christ, what happened to you?" And what is really interesting about that, you could be talking to somebody who's a paranoid schizophrenic. You could be talking to somebody who's really, really poorly. And what is really beautiful about that is they are not interested in their own problems. They're interested in mine. And I think that's truly beautiful. I've been prayed over, and staff get very upset when they do that. And I said, "Leave me. Look, I need all the help I can get." You know, and basically what happens is you then give them something about your disability. You then give them what they need to know, your honesty, your straight talking. And then they will talk to you once you've given them the rights under the Mental Health Act. They're much more forthcoming about opening up to you because you've given something of yourself. You've given a slice of pie. So I do believe that the two go hand in hand, and it's a blessing because it does break down barriers.
And I think that's really interesting. I think what you're saying about it sounds like it almost, you know, your experience, I think your experience of vulnerability, particularly for people who are in such vulnerable positions, such as, you know, mental health wards and mental health hospitals, it bridges that gap a little bit, doesn't it? Whereas I think it can be quite intimidating, you know, from the people that I've worked with, social workers who rock up in their suits, and, you know, legal advisors and solicitors who turn up, you know, with their ties and their folders, and you're sitting there going, I can barely manage to, you know, organize myself enough to make a cup of tea. Yeah. Having that clear visual vulnerability, I think, does make people more willing to talk to you and feel more, you know, able to talk to you and trust you, because you're not just another sort of faceless professional.
It's just really interesting. And I never shy away from answering those questions, ever.
Nah.
Ever.
No, because again, it goes back to image. If you turn around and say you're not in the mood, people don't realise that it's probably taken about 25 minutes for that person to summon up the courage to ask that question in the first place. So you have to run with it.
So they think I'm not going to ask again, ever.
No, exactly.
Which is far worse than the momentary embarrassment of, what's wrong with you then?
Yeah, then that's not embarrassed. I'm never embarrassed by
No.
that because of the intention.
Yeah.
No, so I'm not embarrassed by that at all.
It's really interesting for me to hear you guys talk about that, because so many of my conversations with people about what's wrong with me start because people assume that there is nothing wrong with me. They see me walking down the street with the dog. They see somebody in their early 30s and with a dog that looks quite young, and my visual impairment, I'm able to discern faces and I can look at people when they're talking and make eye contact and things like that. So I don't quote unquote look blind. So for lots of people, they come up and they start going, "Oh, were you training the dog? How old is she?" And I'm like, actually, she's nearly on retirement. She's my working dog and I'm legally blind. You get that moment of people you sort of think, how many of these people would have started talking to me had they known that that was going to be the answer they get? And they're kind of almost forced then to go, and I have had some people who just clam up, just kind of go, oh, and then make their excuses and leave. But most people then ask more questions.
Yeah. Well, they have to ask more questions because they've got themselves in a hole.
Yeah.
That's
the spade. They need the spade to dig themselves back out again. So they,
the reality is, it's like and this is another thing that I get very irritated, and I've seen this from other disabled people, and because I've watched it lots of times, I always make a point of not doing this. So when I used to walk on crutches, I used to swing, and I'd fall over sometimes, and people would run and help me, and I'd be fine. But this one particular day, I was on a bus, and I was grabbing hold of the rail, and the bus stopped, and it lurched, and I fell off the bus.
Oh,
and this mother with her child desperately tried to help me up, and she couldn't. So anyway, she said, "I'm sorry, I can't help you. I haven't got the strength." So anyway, I then got up myself and chased her down the road. And I said, "Look, I just want you to know I'm really grateful for you trying to help me. Do not let it stop you from asking somebody else." And whenever anybody asks for help, or asks if I want help, I always say no, but thank you for asking.
Yeah.
Because it's a positive experience. A lot of disabled people go, "No, I don't want it. Do it myself. I can do it myself." And they're very aggressive, and that has a profound effect on people who really do genuinely need help. Yeah. And because of that bad experience, it then stops people offering, and it causes problems.
There is the one thing that really does bother me a little bit, though, is the whole grabbing me before asking. Grabbing the chair or moving the chair before they just see me as a movable object. That is a bit.
Yeah, well, that's because you're an object, not a human.
Yeah, exactly. I hate that, that is when I will lose my rag.
I don't lose my rag because I just think, in my mind, I suppose it's a bit of a Napoleon complex. You fight the fights you can win.
Yeah.
And I can't be bothered. And I'll just think, fuck it. If they want to push my chair and do the hokey cokey, I don't give a shit. I don't care, because this experience isn't going to last very long.
No.
And and I can get back to my normal life, because I'm not going to be able to change that person's perception while they're doing that.
No.
I'm only going to be able to change that person's view when they're sat down having a drink.
I think the reason why I will probably kick off is not because I'm necessarily offended, although I am offended that you see me as an object rather than a person, but it's out of being quite frightened, because you don't know what's going on in that split second. If somebody's moving you and you've been stationary for a while, and somebody starts moving you without even saying, "Hello, do you mind if I move you?" That I think will make.
Well, I'm not being funny. I'm a fat bastard, and if somebody tried to move me, they'll probably break their back. So. So, sweet revenge. For me, it's quite frightening when somebody sort of shoves me without even saying, "I'm just going to move you because I can't get past." If they move me because they want to get to the tomatoes in Marks and Spencer's or whatever, without saying, "Excuse me, could you move?" But then again, I get the other side of the coin where they see me down an aisle and there's plenty of space to get around me, and they will go right round the other side and come back up rather than coming down the aisle, rather than ask me to move. Or they think that because I'm in a wheelchair, I must
mind powers and can read people's minds, and they'll stand there looking at me without saying excuse me please, and I'm like, I can't see you, just say excuse me.
The reality is I don't have that shit because I do it all online.
It's quite interesting for me to, like, I definitely get, if I'm in a supermarket, I either have people, they will lean over me to avoid the dog, and I'm like, oh yeah, because she's ferocious, she's gonna bite you,
savage.
Yeah. Or I have people stand like to the side and wait for me to notice them, and I'm sort of I'm like, you are going to be waiting a long time for me to see you standing over there where most people couldn't see you, never mind the person with limited vision.
Yeah, but I see that as a different thing. I mean, that's your experience, Alison. I fully respect that, but I actually think that's quite touching, because that's somebody trying to be aware.
I know, I do appreciate that. It's just, I think if you're going to do that, maybe also say, excuse me, can I just get past?
Yeah.
Or,
that's right.
Are you done?
I agree. Yeah. That's it. And again, that's fear. That's all.
I've had it before where I've gone, excuse me please, and the person with the trolley has pushed themselves so far close to the bread they're kind of like spreading like across the bread, like whilst apologising as I get, I'm so very sorry, sorry, I was in the way, I'm so very sorry, as I roll past them. And I think, all right, there's no need to be dramatic about it, like, stop causing a scene. You're the one causing a scene, and I've just gone, excuse me please, I'm terribly sorry, terribly sorry.
You see, I like to walk up behind groups of people who are standing in the middle of the pavement and wait until me and the dog are basically on top of them before making a big song and dance about going, oh, Lola, what's wrong? Why can't we get past? We should be able to walk through. Oh, well, there are people in the way.
Brilliant.
You have to have your little moments of fun, otherwise it's just boring.
Oh, yeah, of course you do.
Yeah.
Of course you do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when it's, if there's a person who's trying, it's a very different story to people who were just being ignorant.
Yeah.
If someone is trying to approach me and trying to ask questions and they're feeling awkward and nervous about it, I do try and be more patient with them. It's hard sometimes when you've had a shitty day already, and you kind of go, do I have to really carry your emotional, baggage, do your emotional work on top of my own today? But when people are just staring, or the thing that I find really hard, the thing that's kind of the biggest trigger for me is when people go, oh, well, you don't look. And then I want them to finish that sentence. I'm like, I don't look what? And I know what they want to say. They want to say blind. I just like to wait while they suddenly go, that's probably not a great sentence, but I'm already too far through it now. What can I say? And, to see people scrabble, because I sort of want to go, you might be surprised that I'm a guide dog user, but if I have to do the work of having to teach everybody that I come across in the street about what a guide dog user is and what that means, then you can do a little bit of work on thinking about how you phrase your responses to me.
It's a relationship that has to happen both ways.
Yeah.
And sometimes, Alice, we're not actually there when that second interaction takes place, as in we may feel that we've lost that relationship, that they haven't given back what we expected. But sometimes we're not actually necessarily there when that interaction hits home. And that we've actually won that argument or won that discussion or won that experience, in a positive way. We're not actually there to see it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we haven't done a good job.
Yeah.
There are times, I don't know if you get this, Lee, where you think this would not happen. I would not be in this situation if I was not in a wheelchair, if I did not have cerebral palsy, and you think this is going in the book. This is going in the book of my life.
That is true, but it's a kind of a rabbit hole I don't go down.
No,
because I have got cerebral palsy.
Yeah,
and I am in this situation.
Yeah,
so I kind of don't go down that route. what I tend to go is, okay, you know, and I just get on with it, because I think, because my energy is really precious. As I'm old, you know, I haven't got the expansive energy to waste my energy on somebody who doesn't deserve to have that energy wasted upon them.
No.
So I try to retain it as much as I can.
Yeah.
Somebody has to really piss me off to you know, get my beef. But
yeah,
you know,
there are times where I think my life is bizarre, but I wouldn't have it any other way. It makes me interested at dinner parties.
well, that's right. And you know, as I said, I get the front row. You know, get front row at Disneyland. I get, you know, it has its perks. Right?
Oh yeah, it's not completely miserable.
I get to meet celebrities who are stupid enough to feel sorry for me. You know, and you know, that's cool. You know, I'm okay with that.
And you get really good photos with them, because they will kneel down. They'll get really close to you because they think this is great
that's
for
right.
my PR image.
That's right. Help the cripples.
Yeah, yeah. It is. Yep. So there are privileges, and I don't want anybody going away from this chat and thinking, you know, or this podcast really, and thinking, oh, it must be. It's all down in the dumps and everything.
No, not at all.
We've got. It's not that at all, is it? Really? There is
no.
a lot of joy to be had.
You know, at the end of the day, I do not focus on. You can't go through life. Yes, I have every day. I always say, I don't want to be disabled. I want to be able-bodied like everybody else. That's what I always say first thing in the morning. But I don't mean it.
No.
You know, I'm not. I kind of mean it. I'd like to be able to tie my own shoelaces. You know, that sort of thing. But the reality is, you know, my life is my life. There's not a lot else I can do. And kicking and screaming about it is like, well, that's a waste of energy, isn't it?
Yeah.
So why bother?
Yeah, for me, it took a long time to get to the point of, the thing I always think about is standing in the bathroom and dropping the lid to my foundation or my moisturizer or whatever, and being on my knees and having searched for it for 3 or 4 minutes and still not being able to find it. I knew I'd hit a turning point in my ability to kind of just go, these are the cards I've been dealt. This is the life I've got. I've got to get on with it. When I stopped getting really frustrated and really wound up and, you know, sitting in the bathroom in tears going, I hate being blind, and started just leaving the bathroom and going, you know, Lola, there's a lid on the floor in there. Don't chew it. And just waiting until my husband or a sighted person comes along and I can go, oh, if you see that, can you put it back on the moisturizer? It seems, I'm sure to people who haven't experienced those kind of situations, it seems really obvious, and it seems like, what, you know, of course you just, because it's not a big thing. But when it happens to you 10 times a day, it can be really wearing. And so it takes a lot of work to get yourself to a point of being able to go, I can't control this. I can't stop this. So I can either exhaust myself being upset about it, or I can try and get on with doing other things, because life is going to just keep going, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. And also, I think what you're actually doing, and I totally get where you're coming from, Alice, you know, and the reality is actually what you're trying to do is deny that there's anything wrong. You know, deny that you actually aren't going to be able to find your foundation because it's too fucking small and you can't see it. You know, so, and actually most people who've got full sight probably wouldn't be able to find a foundation lid anyway. So, you know, but the reality is that you will go to a point and you'll go, what the fuck am I struggling for? When I've got a husband that'll just go, it's down there, I'll pick it up for you.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you know, that's the reality. There are always going to be things either that we can't do or that we find difficult. And I can't change that. Neither can Alice, neither can Lucy. You know, we are, but I tend not to focus on those things. I tend to go, but what I can do is I can be reflective. What I can do is I can act. What I can do is I can do all of these things. And, you know, I try not to focus on what I can't do.
If you listen to me getting ready, if you were to live in my house and you were the room next door and you could listen, you could hear me getting ready in the morning. There is me trying to put my face on in the morning because I've got ham hands that just do not cooperate when I'm doing fiddly little things. So like I will drop lids, I will drop eyeliner pencils, I will drop lipstick, I will poke myself in the eye with mascara, and I'm going, oh, this is, oh, Jesus Christ, oh God, like this. And but I'm not swearing at the whole world going,
no, but you're doing exactly the same as anybody else.
Exactly.
I mean, I drop my eyeliner every morning. It does my head in.
I tell you, it's very, very annoying when it breaks the nib. When you've just like terrible.
When I was at college, I used to wear full makeup every day, and I used to get the carers to crimp my eyelashes. And I had to go to the student union to get them to do it because they refused to do it.
Really?
Because I couldn't do my eyeliner as well, because like you, I've got spazzy hands.
Yeah.
And I'd wear full makeup, foundation, the whole caboodle, and and I had to get help with putting that on, and they said it's not part of our remit. I said yes, it is, because it's something I can't do myself.
Was it like the adamant sort of look? Is that what we're talking about?
Of course it wasn't, Alice. I'm a Prince fan. Why would it be an adamant?
Oh, Prince. I'm sorry. I did forget about your love of Prince.
Yeah, my obsession. Yeah. No, I basically what I did was I went into Body Shop in 1991, I think.
Yeah.
And I just said, and it was a really freaky experience. I have long permed hair, and I walked in and I said to the man, I want to look like this, and I showed him a picture of Prince's face, like very lit up, not full on, war paint, but just a normal, natural look.
You could probably got it on.
Yeah. So I said, that's what I want, and I turned and I looked at his lapel. And he had a Prince symbol on his lapel.
Oh, wow.
So he knew exactly what it was that I wanted.
Fabulous.
And he did all the makeup. He put it all on for me and showed me how to do it, did me the diagrams.
Great.
Fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's what I did. That's what I did. And that's part, and I used to get, I was verbally abused for wearing makeup in college and stuff. But, I wanted to express myself.
It goes back, I think, to a conversation that me and Lucy had quite early on in the podcast about sort of being seen for something other than, your mobility aid. It's, Lucy's got her bright red hair and you've got your purple hair and stuff like that. It's that, see me for this other thing that I am. So I'm not just the guy in a wheelchair. I'm the guy in the wheelchair with the purple hair.
Well, my thing is, it's a celebration. I got into Prince when I was 14 years old, and I was still trying to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do and who I wanted to be. And at the time I was having, horrific time trying to integrate into society. And, listening to his music, he was basically saying, celebrate your difference. Don't hide your difference. If you want to wear makeup, wear makeup. If you want to wear a lady's scarf, wear a lady's scarf, and wear it with pride. And I did, and it totally empowered me as a human being. And I did, and inadvertently, it drew attention away from what was wrong.
Yeah.
What was wrong, but what my disability was.
Yeah.
So, why is he wearing makeup? Why is he, all of those sort of things. And it actually served as a massive purpose for me. And and still, nearly 50. I'm still dyeing my hair purple. Still, very much an advocate of allow the fireworks of creativity and difference to be celebrated. I'm still very much like that, just like I was when I was 17.
Dyeing my hair red is part of who I am now. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it just, again, it's like what you said, it distracts from everything else. So people are more likely to go, oh, that's a nice colour red.
Yeah. When I lost my job at the CAB, I hammered the job market.
Yeah.
And anyway, every cripple gets a disability advisor, don't they? And so anyway, he said, how many applications have you made, in the last 2 weeks? I went 11. He went, what? I went 11. I said, I want to work. I don't want to be on the dole necessarily longer than I am, because I don't think I need to see you for some time.
No.
And then when I got an interview, one of my first ever interviews I got was for Costco.
Right.
And I turned up in a bright purple suit, cream shirt, DMs, suited and booted, dressed to the nines, looking immaculate. Most of the people in that queue looked like they just got out of bed. And I went through the thing, and they said, oh, look, we don't think it's a good idea you apply for this job because their reputation for disability is not good. And I said, I want to apply. I said, I think it'd be good. Anyway, and I had to go for 7 interviews.
Just for the one job?
Just for the one job, yeah.
Jesus Christ.
But when I went...
not the MI5.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But when I went for this first job, when I went for the first interview, these 2 girls, women I should say, I went to open the door and walked in. They both said in harmony, nice suit. And that started the whole thing, when they liked me, and then I got through to the next day. And I got shortlisted to the last 3, and I didn't get the job. But the point I'm trying to make is it's all, it was a distraction from my crutches, the purple suit. That's why I wear it.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about, because it's about the crutches aren't me. This is me, and this is what you need to look at.
It's a bit like, isn't it? Women going, excuse me, like, people who get their boobs stared at. They're going, excuse me, I'm up here. Hello, I'm up here. So it's with us. It's like, don't look at the chair.
I have that problem all the time.
But it's like, it's like, don't look at my chair, look at me. Don't look at my chair, look at me. Or don't look at my mobility aid. Or don't look at my, assistance animal. Look at me. Hello.
Yeah, I don't say it out loud, but I'd like to think that my personality is so powerful that they've got no choice.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there, Lee.
I think this has been really interesting, guys, getting your the perspectives on your kind of wheelchair experiences has been really interesting for me.
Oh, I'm pleased. I hope I'm helping in this endeavour.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one of the things that me and Lucy have said is we really feel like we're quite lacking on sort of male voices. So it's really nice to have a man who is willing to kind of come on and put himself out there and talk about his experience. Yeah.
I'm an open book, as I said in my questionnaires. There's no limits. Ask what you want. I don't have this pretentiousness. I don't have that.
No.
So ask what you like.
And I think I'm quite happy with everything we've covered so far. Lucy, is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. I think we've covered quite a lot of ground now, and I think what we've talked about has been very interesting and informative. Is there anything that you want to sort of say, Lee?
No, I just it's been a real privilege to be part of this collective, and if there's if you need any further help or further podcasting, I'd be happy to stay connected. It's a real privilege.
Is there anything do you want to plug your theatre group or anything like that?
Yeah. Yes, I will. I'm part of a theatre company called Ego Performance Company. We are still running groups even during lockdown, and there is a YouTube channel where you can see all the episodes of our lockdown soap called Coronation Street. There's 20 episodes, and watch this space because there's going to be a Christmas special. And we are always looking for members. We have a website. If you put Ego Performance Company in Google, it will come up, and you can contact us.
We'll put it all on the show notes.
Yeah, in the description.
I've really enjoyed being grilled.
Have you?
It's really interesting because actually I'm talking about something that normally bores people, and my view is probably different to most. And to meet 2 people that are actually saying, I'm really interested in this. I'm really interested in what you're saying, and I'm going to take some stuff away from this, and I will myself also, is a really positive thing. I'm going to have a very positive day as a result of this experience.
Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us and agreeing to come on.
Yeah, I'm just very happy. It's a great thing, and I would say the label thing I love. I just hate labels.
Yeah.
If there wasn't any labels, nobody would be in pain. I really do believe that.
Yeah, definitely.
Their measure is their label, and if you didn't have that label, you wouldn't be in pain anymore.
No.
If you think about it, Lucy is Lucy and Alice is Alice. Lucy is not Lucy with a disability. Lucy is Lucy and Alice is Alice. We shouldn't even be talking about it.
Yeah.
They're just too... It's irrelevant. Yes, it has to be considered when you're doing stuff, but as a whole, your disability is irrelevant. It's a non-starter in a conversation. It should just be, this is Lucy and this is Alice, and the fact that you've got a wheelchair doesn't matter, and the fact that Alice has got a sight dog doesn't matter. This is Alice, and this is Lucy, and that's where it should be. And we are moving towards that way. But I think actually at the moment society is going through a massive thing where they love labels and they love celebrating labels, and I can't stand it. I run a mile away, and if I was to give any last thought on that, is that labels are not something to be celebrated. There's something to be feared, because they can be quite dangerous and quite destructive and quite a burden.
It's been really interesting to have you on, Lee. Thank you ever so much for your thoughts and your insights.
Yeah, really happy to be here, and thanks very much for having me.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to the lABLEd podcast. If you like the show, please rate, review and subscribe. You can follow us on social media at lABLEd podcast.
Our thanks go to our editor Adam Hall, our music composer Maisie Crunden, and our graphic designer Sarah Coley.
We'll see you next time.